Good day everyone! In this video, I will show you on how to introduce yourself in Japanese and some habits that you will able to work into your conversation. So, let me introduce myself first. Konnichiwa minasan, watashi wa merani MACATO desu. Philippine kara kimashita. Philippine gen desu. Ima, Nihongo o narakimasu. Arigatō, dozo yoroshiku. Okay, let's proceed to the name of the hobbies using these phrases in the sentence, which are I like, I love, I don't like, and I don't like very much. Okay, let's proceed. The first hobby is hiking, which means hiking go. So, using this in the sentence, using this phrase, I like hiking, you will say in Japanese, watashi wa hiking go ga soki desu. Yes. And when we say, I love hiking, you will say, watashi wa hiking go ga daisoki desu. And when we say, I don't like hiking, you will say, watashi wa hiking go ga soki de wa arimasen. And last, when we say, I don't like hiking very much, you will say, watashi wa hiking go ga amari soki ja arimasen. The next hobby is surfing, which means surfing. If you like surfing, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa surfing ga soki desu. And if you love surfing, you will say, watashi wa surfing ga daisuki desu. And if you don't like surfing, you will say, watashi wa surfing ga soki de wa arimasen. And if you really don't like surfing, you will say, watashi wa surfing ga amare soki ja arimasen. Next is volleyball, which means bareball. If you like volleyball, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa bareball ga soki desu. And if you love volleyball, you will say, watashi wa bareball ga daisuki desu. And if you don't like volleyball, you will say, watashi wa bareball ga soki de wa arimasen. And if you don't like volleyball very much, you will say, watashi wa bareball ga amare soki ja arimasen. Next one is reading, which means dokushu. When you say, I like reading, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa dokushu ga soki desu. And if you love reading, you will say, watashi wa dokushu ga daisuki desu. And if you don't like reading, you will say, watashi wa dokushu ga soki de wa arimasen. And if you don't like reading very much, you will say, watashi wa dokushu ga amare soki ja arimasen. Next is basketball, which means basketball. When we say, I like basketball, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa basketball ga suki desu. And if you love basketball, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa basketball ga daisuki desu. And if you don't like basketball, you will say, watashi wa basketball ga soki de wa arimasen. And if you don't like basketball very much, you will say, watashi wa basketball ga amare soki ja arimasen. The next one is theater, which means shibai. When you say, I like theater, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa shibai ga suki desu. And if you love theater, you will say, watashi wa shibai ga daisuki desu. And if you don't like theater, you will say, watashi wa shibai ga soki de wa arimasen. And if you don't like theater very much, you will say, watashi wa shibai ga amare soki ja arimasen. The next one is film or movie, which means eiga. When you say, I like film or movie, in Japanese, you will say, watashi wa eiga ga suki desu. And if you love film or movie, you will say, watashi wa eiga ga daisuki desu. And if you don't like film or movie, you will say, watashi wa eiga ga soki de wa arimasen. And if you don't like film or movie very much, you will say 私は映画があまり好きじゃありません。And then golf, which means ゴルフ。When you say I like golf in Japanese, you will say 私はゴルフが好きです。And if you love golf, you will say 私はゴルフが大好きです。And if you don't like golf, you will say 私はゴルフが好きではありません。And if you don't like golf very much, you will say 私はゴルフがあまり好きじゃありません。Next one is shopping, which means 買い物。When you say I like shopping in Japanese, you will say 私は買い物が好きです。And if you love shopping, you will say 私は買い物が大好きです。And if you don't like shopping, you will say 私は買い物が好きではありません。And if you don't like shopping very much, you will say 私は買い物があまり好きじゃありません。And the last one is sumo wrestling in Japanese, sumo. If you like sumo wrestling in Japanese, you will say 私はソモが好きです。And if you love sumo wrestling, you will say 私はソモが大好きです。And if you don't like sumo wrestling, you will say 私はソモが好きではありません。And if you don't like sumo wrestling very much, you will say 私はソモがあまり好きじゃありません。